good to go.
All right, we're gonna flip the lever. My meter is green. Everything looks good. The meeting is yours, Madam Mayor. Let me know if you need anything.
Thank you, Ken. Apparently the meeting is Vladimir's. God, I love those caption things. All right, it is 7:01 on, Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. Calling to order the special meeting of the City Council. Mr. Gitschlag, if you could roll call, please.
It says August, not Mr. Gitschlag.
Yes, sorry.
Mayor
I'm
Scripture.
growing rather fond of Gitschlag. I'm here. I'm here in, where am I? Gowan, Michigan.
I like what you put on the screen.
Mayor Pro Tem Milan.
I'm here in Clawson, Michigan.
Councilmember Moffitt.
Here in Clawson.
Councilmember Phillips.
Aaron Clausen.
And Councilmember Sampson.
Aaron Clausen.
That's the quorum, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, August. Okay, before we jump into the public comment and for the items on the agenda, I wanted to do a quick recap coverage. I think Mayor Pro Tem sent out an email with some concerns, and I believe we had another resident send out an email echoing some questions. So I want to address some of that before we get into this, because I think there are some serious misunderstandings about a lot of stuff. First, I think there was a question as to why, I'm going to say accusation because it sure felt like that to me, on why we were holding a meeting, a special meeting. It wasn't transparent, like it was trying to avoid public scrutiny. And actually, none of that is true. First of all, I think people are getting a little confused on what transparency means and what required to do both in spirit and by the letter of the law. This is open, it's being recorded, it was noticed. And the reason for calling it before the next meeting was on advice of Mr. Nushai, Rennis, on advice of Rennis. While, first of all, the motion that we passed last time should have been worded differently. It shouldn't have been a motion to, what do we say? Continuing resolution. You know, we're a city, we don't have continuing resolution. The other thing is possible unintended consequences. Meaning, actually, we're not sure. Meaning there could be, does this affect bond rating? You know, what would be some unintended consequences of not passing this on time? It was not a conversation negating my concerns or even discussing them. It was simply a conversation about, you know, what might be a good way to handle this with trying to avoid those unintended consequences. I did meet with Mr. Smith and we did have a conversation. And I think some of the information, while I do still feel that there are things in this budget that are problems, I also acknowledge one of my biggest concerns, and it was a question asked several times, is we understand it can be fixed when, how and when, and that. So the conversation revolved around, you know, what are the things that need to get done? How do we, you know, line those things up and make sure that they happen? And Mr. Smith, you can jump in at any time, but that was the gist of our conversation. And, you know, what do we need to do to get council comfortable to approve the budget? And knowing that there are things, questions unanswered and things that need to be fixed. You might have also noticed that from what Mr. Smith sent, there was some changes in formatting and some changes in other things in some of the information. And there's been a lot of discussion, or again, I feel like accusations that, you know, we're holding this budget up for personal reasons or for whatever reasons. And I want to point out that we have a budgeting act in Michigan. We have laws, and under those laws, we have a bare minimum of what a budget should include. It's, you know, Budgeting and Accounting Act of 1968 or something, plus amendments in 78 and whatever. It's, if we'd had training, maybe we'd have actually seen some of that stuff in detail, but it very specifically states in the law what and I'm going to say city manager, even though it defines it, it could be city administrator, it could be all sorts of things, but I'm going to define it as city manager as it applies to our case. What the city manager shall, not may, not maybe, not if you feel like it, shall include in a recommended, and by the way, budget is a loose term that we use for convenience, but what we are actually passing is an appropriations act. We are appropriating by what Mr. Smith is authorized to legally spend by expenditures in a year. Okay, not necessarily by line item, the whole budget. And well, I'm not going to, the concerns that I had, like I said, we talked about, there's some understanding, and like I said, you've seen stuff. One of the other things we kept asking, I know Kathy did, I know I did, we asked for historical data, we asked for other things. The budget shall, by law, shall, and this is the bare minimum, shall include the last closed fiscal year, that would be 1920. I'm sorry, ending in 19. I confused my fiscal years. The information to date on the open fiscal year, which would be now, and then the projected for the future fiscal year. It wasn't until this budget that you saw the last closed fiscal year. We're also supposed to receive a historical, some historical perspectives. And you know what? I am not feeling like I need to be responsible for training everybody on the law. I feel like everybody should know that. And obviously, people don't, or there would not have been some of these accusations about what's your problem? Why can't you pass this? Why are you asking all these questions? Why aren't you trusting the experts? Well, I think at a minimum, we were asking for the things that are required to be in there. And so this meeting is to go ahead and approve what I still think is a budget that had some flaws, which even Mr. Smith in our conversation or in the meetings has said, yes, there's some things that need to be fixed. But I'm going to ask him to speak here in a little bit, with what is the plan for how do we look back and fix what we think needs to be fixed? How do we look forward? So we're following a good budget process and good fiscal responsibility, good appropriations, because this is our job. It is absolutely Mr. Smith's job with his staff to present and recommend to us a budget. And it is our job to make sure that we clearly understand it. And if there's only 3 of us that had questions, well, so be it, but 3 of us had questions. And so this meeting was, like I said, on recommendation of Mr. Nushai, just to make sure we don't have any unintended consequences. And Mr. Smith has agreed and to how we're going to move forward and to come up with a more specific plan other than don't worry, we'll fix it later. So that's just kind of the short version, but I think some of that context is important. I'll also speak very briefly about the putting on the resolution for the Charter Commission. We did vote that at the last meeting. We approved that there would be a Charter Commission go to the ballot for the residents to decide if they want a Charter Commission. All we decided is that we would send it to the ballot for the residents to decide, and that simultaneously they would also then, if anybody was interested in being part of that commission, Charter Commission, they would put themselves on the ballot too. There was a deadline of August 10th to have the right language in. And I asked Mr. Smith, would it be helpful for you, August, and Rennis to have this language if we had the resolution by council? Because they can't do anything until we had looked at it and made sure, and given the vote. So that was simply put on there. This was the original conversation was for the budget. I suggested, well, would this be helpful? And the answer was yes. And I said, well, then please, if you have that language ready, let's go ahead and do it since we're meeting anyways. So this is not anything new. We've already approved to send this to the ballot. I had one of the comments received about the Charter Commission that I got in an email, and everybody else did too, was that we weren't involving residents. And that is absolutely, I think there's a total misunderstanding, because the entire point, and I've said this before and I'll say it again. I think Mr. Smith and Mr. Nushai did an excellent job presenting to us. Originally, I did not think this was a great idea. I listened, paid attention, thought what was presented, and it changed my mind. It clearly changed a few other minds, and that's why we're here. But the whole point of doing a commission is to involve residents and to get residential input. So I'm not sure where the comment came from that we would, to exclude the public and exclude residents from participating, because this is the polar opposite of what that would be to try and exclude. This is including. So those are just some clarity from the comments we received prior to the meeting and some of the questions. So that's a little bit of clarity on that. And I'm also going to make a brief comment about the calling a special meeting. And everybody should be present, so we're meeting in person and, but being convenient so I can be in my vacation home, even though I wasn't cited. There's only 2 of us that I know of that have vacation homes. I'm going to say this. We are still in a situation where we can do hybrid meetings, we can do remote, and we can do in person. And Kathy, I know that in person is better. Hopefully this was just going to be a quick meeting. Mr. Smith's going to give us some information and we're going to go ahead and do what we're going to do and hopefully pass the budget. So we don't have any of those issues and move forward with whatever we need to address. Quick meeting. There's been a lot of people saying, please pick up a clipboard and run for office. And I think all of us agree. Gosh knows we don't agree on a lot of stuff, but I think all of us agree encouraging people to run. Well, an impediment to people running is sometimes flexibility in meetings. And whatever anybody wants to say about me and how they want to go ahead and, do some ad hominem attacks on me about, that's fine. Except if we're looking at how do we encourage people to run for office, I sincerely hope the state of Michigan changes their rules permanently to allow for a more hybrid version. I have had several people when I say, hey, you should run for office. Yeah, but then I couldn't do this. And it's I travel for work and it's the every other week meeting. And I could make them, but I can't be there. And, well, we have this, we're on the road for a month and they're just not interested if they have to be there face to face. So all those comments aside, if we want people to run, I hope we continue with this little bit of flexibility. Plus, that hybrid meeting I thought was wonderful. We had people show up that might not have shown up in person, and we did have people show up in person. So this is not an attempt to circumvent any kind of open meeting or any, it was something that needed to be done, and I already had plans to be here, and to accommodate the advice, I called the meeting. And I called the meeting while I was here, not coming home. I'm here. Next time though. I was fully planning on being here for the July 6th meeting in person. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and open, and I know there's council comments in the end, so please, I'm sure it'll be comments, but I'm going to go ahead and open the floor to public comment for items on the agenda. I don't even know if we have public comment for items off the agenda, but we do have it right here. We just have it for items on the agenda this evening. So Ken, do you want to do your magic thing there?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. For anyone that would like to make public comment this evening, we'll need to have you raise your virtual hand. In order to do that, on most devices, you'll click on participants. That'll pop open a dialog box, and from there you will see the raise your hand or raise hand feature. Again, we'll need to have you raise your virtual hand, and then we will call on you. So anyone that's in the meeting currently, if you'd like to speak, feel free to raise your virtual hand, and we'll give it just a moment here. And I am not seeing any takers at this time, Madam Mayor.
All right, then, okay, then we will go ahead and still no takers? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment for items on the agenda.
Yeah, still no takers.
Okay, thanks, Ken. And with public comment closed, we'll move to the first item on the agenda. Mr. Smith, before we go ahead and move for the budget to be approved, would you be so kind as to share some of what we had talked about and what you had said, about looking at the plan to move forward and being some specificity on how we would be able to look back and able to look forward.
Yes, and speaking of the main issues that we know that were brought up were the budget calendar, a more improved revamped budget message. Kelly and I are working on those. We'll probably most likely will see draft forms of those at the next meeting on July 6th and or the following one. We also know that the discussion, we are fully aware of it. Kelly and I have been discussing the millage that will be expiring after this upcoming taxes, and that we have to have a workshop on that to have planning for that in place, to have an actual discussion with that. That's an important topic to have because that ballot language as well could, the August 10th deadline is with that as well, whatever you so choose as council. So we know that those discussions with ARP, there's no rush with that. The state treasury even is advised against that, but we do know that we need to have planning. So there's going to be a lot of tied into the calendar. There's going to be a lot of these workshops and discussions that are going to be really in play, if you will, over the next, let's just say 6 months, that we know that we'll have that calendar and then working towards that to set up these meetings that are, tough decisions to be made. We're good right now, but we do have to be better with our forecasting and be better with our planning and training and workshops, and we'll be working on all those things. So Kelly and I are fully aware of all those, and we'll be addressing those things now that we're back into moving through into the summer. So we will provide those things to you.
And I assume Kelly's not on yet, so she doesn't, nothing to add. Okay. Just want to make sure.
I think Kelly is on.
Oh, then I guess I'm asking if she had anything to add. Sorry, I didn't see if she was on.
Yep, she just joined. Kelly, if you could.
Well, that's not fair because she doesn't know what we talked about. I don't want to put her on the space. I don't want to put her on the spot if we just got on.
With our timeline, the way we were, of course, moving forward with next budget, that we'll have more graphs, more information. The messaging will be clearer, more, specific, like we're saying, with forecast, all of that. So with more time on our hands, yes, all of those things will be addressed moving forward. We have the plan that she and I have been talking about, and we'll be providing that information to you.
Yes, and Mike has fully relayed everything that we have talked about, so I have nothing additional to add.
I got a question,
Yes.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, sir.
This is for Mike. Mike, are you going to send me the information I've requested several times for the FTEs and how the water rates were made? You can pull up Aaron Irwin showed me a worksheet you guys have. That's really what I'm looking for, is how you get to that admin fees. And the other thing.
Now that, okay, I know to look into that file. I will see what he provided to you and do that.
And then, Madam Mayor, we need to, at the next council meeting, have the staff come over, and they want us to trust their numbers, but they couldn't explain millages. And they explained the school millages wrong to the point where even the school's upset about it.
I've already spoke to Mr. Smith about that. We're going to have that on the next agenda, and I'm not, either Kathy, Tim, or one of us will go ahead and do that. When I say, I'm sorry, not Kathy, Jackie. So
Yeah.
we'll go ahead and take care of that in the next meeting.
Yes,
That's a pretty serious mistake. If everybody wants us to trust their numbers, you think we could explain the millage rate because we're collecting it.
So hopefully, yes, we will, or not hopefully, we will definitely do clarity on that at the next meeting.
Already.
Yes. Mayor
If
Potem.
Councilmember Sampson is requesting information from Mr. Smith, I would assume that information, those requests would go to all of us, and the information then would also be submitted to all of us.
I don't believe there's any requirement that happens. Mr. Smith is welcome to share it, but Mr. Nushai, is there a requirement that if we send requests that everybody on council is copied on it? Because it almost sounds a little bit like we're deliberating backwards.
I'm not going to send it to everybody. That's a violation of the OMA Act. So
It's actually not a violation to request to send an email to people altogether. The violation comes when people respond separately and act like they're making decisions. I think I'm correct on that.
I don't
My
think
point
so.
is not that I want emails from you, Councilmember Sampson. I could probably speak for a few of us that probably aren't really concerned for that. But if there's information being disseminated that is important to you for making sound decisions and having the appropriate information, It is most likely information that should be shared to all. That
And-
should be pretty simple.
And the answer should go to all you, but my questions are going to go to Mike. He can send the answers to all of you.
All right. Well, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and make the motion and we can discuss further. So I move that we approve the 2021-22 fiscal year budget. However, Mike, I'm going to ask, can we change that language to read what it really should be, which is we are actually approving an appropriations act, a general appropriations act for the 2021-22 fiscal year. So what I am moving is that we approve the General Appropriations Act as presented for the 2021-22 fiscal year. Yeah, do we approve? That was the end of the sentence.
I'll
Yes.
support that.
All right. There is one, this is really hurting me because Mr. Smith, I'm just uncomfortable because of the way I think some of the numbers are presented. I'm so wanting to make an amendment to this, but I am trusting what we talked about, that we are going to have the opportunity very sooner rather than later to revisit some of this, because I am simply not comfortable voting. I'm still not comfortable with this, but I'm agreeing to it because we have reached a agreement on how we're going to move forward.
Madam Mayor, put yours in the amendment. Let's re-amend it and put the actual dates in
Well,
it.
let me explain what I'm concerned about, and before I amend it, or if I amend it, I would actually like to hear the thoughts of Mr. Smith and Ms. Rao. Here's one of my big points of discomfort. I have 2 points. Well, the first one's a revenue, which is different than an appropriations act it's about the expenditure. So I can leave my revenue issue aside and we can figure that out. And I know we're going to work on that. The expenditure part. So just to be clear, when we approve a budget, an appropriations, when we appropriate the money for the upcoming year, what we are essentially saying, we are actually saying to the city manager is you have authority to spend up to this amount. And when you look at the Budget Act and it says not by line item, that doesn't mean we as a council don't get to look at line items and see how they fall in with our goals and stuff like that. But what it means is that we are not telling him, if you go over this line item, you need extra approval, or this line item. We're approving the Appropriations Act in total, and he has authority to spend up to that total. And he also would then have authority to potentially transfer between funds, to say, okay, and a perfect example would be some of our funds operate in, let's say, the red. I mean, they're either fully subsidized by the general fund, or there's partial fees and then the general fund. And so, it's saying, okay, you can use those general fund monies in, this special revenue area or this other thing, whatever, this different fund like the water. But he still has, and of course he's bound by the laws, and if it's a grant, he can only spend the grant the way it's intended. Those things all hold, but we are giving him the authority to spend up to a certain amount with a lot of flexibility. And my discomfort is in having the American Rescue Act money in there, period, because what it is in the budget as, unless it changed and I missed it, but I looked it up and I think it was the same, is unallocated expenses. And yes, we have limits under the American Rescue Act for what we can spend those for, but it can be business, it can be there's several categories. We are essentially approving in this budget, and I am not saying, Mr. Smith or anybody else for a second, that would be, some big master plan of Mike to go run around and spend $1 point whatever million without, and of course he's just talked about how we're going to have meetings. But that's still a level of discomfort for me that we would approve something like that without already having that plan in place, knowing we're simply saying we're appropriating that money and saying, yep, you can spend it within thing. And so I guess Mike and Ms. Rennis, anybody, give me a little bit more comfort on that, and I don't need to amend it. But do you understand what I'm pointing out there about how it works and why that would make me a little uncomfortable? Again, I am not saying that you would do it. I'm just saying it, when we have so many questions, some of the stuff in the budget, and as we still haven't locked down some of those things. Yeah, you see where I'm, Mike,
Yeah.
you're on mute. Oh, there you go.
No, I see. I hear your concerns. Clearly, I know Kelly and I know the fully obligations. We've been on plenty of webinars talking about that from the Treasury and knowing that, I mean, the auditing, the background and all the things that we're going to do. I'm going to present anything to you. We're going to have discussions about that, what the plan is, how we're going to utilize it. I mean, all it is that I'm going to do, you know, present to you ideas. You'll present to me. We'll have good discussions, good dialogue, and what the plan is to use those funds. It's just kind of sitting there. It's waiting. I don't know how Kelly, how else.
So one of our budget amendments, that's what I mean. It's kind of sitting, that's what I'm kind of,
What are the
so
budget
one of our
amendments that
first
we
budget
pulled?
amendments going forward would be to say it's no longer unallocated. Plus, I'm actually not honestly sure that we can budget for that full amount because I did the math. I don't even think we get the second half until the start of our next fiscal year.
The Treasury is very, I mean, they're not even releasing the information until July 6th for a website that we're going to be utilizing to get the information. They don't know the exact dates. They all said to utilize it that way, but it could be an amendment because we don't know when the tranche payment is going to come.
So I guess you're telling, the advice right now that they're giving us to go ahead and include the full amount in the Appropriations Act?
And then have an amendment to, because
Okay.
we don't know with all those deadlines.
Okay, so they did say to go ahead and put it in there. Okay, that I didn't know for sure. All right, if that's the case, and then based on that, and then knowing that we are definitely going to look
And
sooner rather than later. Yes.
can I just add a comment to that? This is unlike any other grant funds we've ever received. So, you know, typically we have an idea of why we need a grant, what we're going to spend it on. So this is a rare occasion that is just sitting there as a placeholder until it's determined how we're going to spend the money. And then it will be allocated appropriately.
Okay. In that case, my motion stands. I'm moving that we approve the General Appropriations Act for the 2021-22 fiscal year. And we have a second. So does anybody have any questions or other comments then? Yes, Mayor Pro Tem. You just went on mute. Oh, there you go.
Okay, I am curious if the verbiage that you just changed this proposal to, if it works as far as our requirements to approve a budget. Will we have problems later on with the fact that we didn't approve a budget, we approved appropriations?
And what I was trying to explain is that by law, it's not actually a budget, it's a General Appropriations Act.
Yes, I understand that I took notes. I understand what you said.
And a General
My
Appropriations
question wasn't
Act-
really to you, it was to our attorney.
Oh,
To
well, you
see
didn't
if
say
it
that.
meets the requirements that we have as a council, that it's not to, you know, I know you are very well versed on all of this. You make it very well known to us. I'm trying to just make sure we cross our Ts and, you know, dot our Is, like sometimes we don't.
Mayor Pro Tem Milana does. The general appropriations is appropriate language.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Moffett.
My question's for Mr. Smith and Ms. Rao. I hear that there was some formatting changes and a change to the message. Is there any substantive change to the numbers and the essence of what was presented up to us over the past couple of months? Has anything significantly changed in any of that? Or is it just the formatting and the budget message?
The numbers have not changed since Kelly's first presented the actual numbers. Correct, Kelly? It's just formatting.
That is correct.
So just formatting and the cover message is all that's changed over what we've been presented over the past couple meetings.
Correct.
Thank you.
As I said, I am not comfortable voting for this. I don't like voting for this because I still don't trust some of those numbers, but I am convinced of the reasons why. And
Nothing was being addressed to you, Ms. Scripture.
I'm sorry, who?
Ms. Scripture. Nothing was being addressed to you.
All right, Sue, thank you. Anybody else?
I just want to,
Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
I just wanted to say to me, it wasn't the wording and all that. I just had I had questions on why this number, why that number, and where did they get this number? I had those questions answered. That was my issue. I was not understanding, because of the formatting, I was not understanding where numbers were coming and going from. But I understand that now.
Mr. Sampson, that would leave you left. Councilmember Sampson?
Already made all my comments.
Oh, all right. In that case, August, if you could roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Milan,
Yes.
Councilmember Moffitt,
Yes.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture.
Yes,
That passes, Madam Mayor.
thank you, August. All right, then next on the agenda, we have consideration of, you know what, Mike, why don't you take this? Because go ahead. I don't need to read this out. The language you guys put together, you know this better than I do. And so why don't you take this for what we're considering approving, maybe answer some questions, and then, are you there, Mike? Did I lose him? Oh, there you go.
So I had August and Rennes review the first one. This is the language. Basically, the bottom line after all the resolution, we do the background. The basic question is, shall there be a general revision of the Clawson City Charter? Yes, no. That is the most basic of questions. That is what all the other whereases that lead up to it, that is kind of just part of the process. I don't know if you want to read the entire thing, but this will be presented resolution to propose a general revision of the city charter. I utilize this with looking at other communities that have done a similar approach. This is the same formatting that they've done in the resolution to present to the state and to the county to get onto the ballot. And so, I mean, this one's a pretty direct question. Rennes, if you have anything, I mean, you both reviewed it, August, and so from the clerk side, from the legal side, this is that question.
I agree with Mike. It is appropriate for what it is. He did a good job with the question and answer. I thought it was excellent. So
Yeah, I thought so too. It was excellent. Okay, so we are then, so as it's written then, would anybody like to make that motion, or
Rennes, how should the motion read?
exactly as it is here, we're good? Okay,
yes, thank you.
I'll move the consideration of approving the city of Clawson City Charter General Revision Ballot Proposition be submitted to the electors at the city at the November 2nd, 2021 general elections.
be approved.
Be approved. There we go.
Support.
All right, motion and support. Any other questions for Mr. Nushai, August, Mike? I know you guys all put a lot of work into getting this ready and good to go. No questions for?
Sue, is that your hand up?
I do.
Oh, go ahead. Thank
Yeah.
you.
There was quite a bit of information in the question and answers. It seems like the development of this whole process was done without the input of council. For example, one of the questions was, once the committee finishes producing their document, it goes right to the governor. The council has absolutely no input on the document. And I remember when we had discussions, that was an element that we discussed. I still oppose, for the record, oppose the entire thing. But we had talked about having the council weigh in on it, and that's been eliminated. There's also no discussion about what happens if we don't get enough people elected. What if, if we don't get 9? What happens if people leave over the course of 3 years? There's also an appropriation of $20,000 with no limit as to what, and I don't understand what they need $20,000 for. So that's one of my biggest concerns about this whole thing, is understanding the mechanics of how this is going to work. It should have been workshopped. We workshopped plenty of other big ticket items that we were discussing, the ethics committee, all those kinds of things, and came to a group decision as to how it would function. And that didn't happen here. A couple people went off and wrote all the rules and wrote all exactly how it was going to work and all that sort of thing. And it should be something that we all have input. And for that reason and a variety of others, I am opposed to this.
So, Mr. Smith, I'll go ahead and respond to one of those because I know, and I know you can respond to a few. Well, I'll respond to two things. And you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that and I remember this from your presentation, by doing an elected commission, they have their own authority to do the charter. That's why council, it's not a council activity. It is a charter commission that's part of the way that actually works by, I don't know if I want to say law, but whatever. Is that correct? I mean, that is.
Yes, they do. And then basically at the final, because we discussed 3 different options back in February at the workshop. With this one, yes, it would be an elected body. These are proposed FAQs, just so, I mean, yes, we can add those other items in. But as far as actually moving forward with it, with the process, they submit it, they do it. The council would see it before it's sent up as a one last body that the council approves that this is then going to go before. And we can make sure, of course, to include that. I think.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you just said approves.
What's that?
You just
Approves to put on the ballot, not approves the chart. It's just basically we're approving that this is the final document after it's been legally, I don't know the correct.
Vetted by the governor, the process, the official process it has to go through by law. Regardless, I mean, that's how a charter gets changed, right? The one, I will speak to the budget part. That was part of a conversation that I had with Mr. Smith, and it actually was overall some of my entire budget concerns is that we should, as a best practice, and I hope we'll be hearing more about best practices soon, but as a best practice, when we enter into any type of a project or any type of, we talk about entering into one, we should be doing a project budget. And I specifically asked to start including those as part of the general conversation of how do we do a better job with our budgeting in general. And I asked to have those start including. I think I've raised this at a prior meeting. I am 100% for, I think it's fabulous that our chief of police is going through this accreditation process. I do not think it's fabulous that we weren't given a project budget. I mean, I would have, approved it. I'd have been happy to. I think it's a great thing, but I think it would have been nice to see. And that actually, I'm not sure why that didn't fall into, if that ends up being part of why we have to do a necessary budget amendment. I don't know, because we never saw a project budget. And that is something we should see for things. So I asked for an estimate. I gave some categories that August mentioned one category and said, oh, we should be thinking about this. I said, great. Put together an estimate and make sure that's part of this, because that is what we should be considering when we do these things, the cost of things, direct and indirect. So for that, that came from me to Mr. Smith. Yes, Councilmember Moffitt.
So what you just said is part of my opposition. It sounds like you and Mike and Rennis had a conversation about how this is going to work, and that's not how things are supposed to happen. It's supposed to be the entire council, not just you. But also, Rennis, I have a question. Is there anything that prohibits, it sounds like council has to approve this, but their hands are tied, they don't get any input. Is there anything that prohibits it going through a council review before it goes to the governor? We could craft it that way if we wanted to, right?
No, I'm afraid not. So the way the language is set, you elect, once you authorize this, which you've done a portion of the authorization already to land us here. If this passes, that was the last 3/5 vote that we did. Once you pass this here and if you create this commission that will run for an election, that's one of those 2 main paths. We talked about 3 paths, but that's one of the 2 main paths. One was to go for council to do the work, if you recall, right? To go
I
ahead.
do.
Yep, yep. And then the other one was the commission to do the work. And these 9 members that once you approve this run, gain these positions, the authority is shifted onto them. And then it goes, actually, there's actual case, it's law that it should go to the Attorney General and the Governor for review. Those 2 bodies review it as to do whatever review we pursue to their.
We do get input though, right, Mr. Nushai, in the sense that they are open meetings. We can
Yeah.
come in and comment, we can contribute, they're just like any other resident in Clausen, we do absolutely can have input in the normal process.
Any resident can, but I'm addressing Councilmember Moffitt's question with respect to councils as a body input, so.
Right. So it's council giving up one of their responsibilities to this other body, one of their duties to this other body.
You can certainly analyze it that way. I won't quarrel with you.
Thank you.
I don't think that's us giving up our duty.
Well,
I
you're
think
not
that
the
it's
only
an option.
opinion that counts. You're obviously the loudest voice, but you're not the only opinion that counts here.
We act like adults.
That would be nice if everyone did. That'd be great.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I have several reservations, many of which were already spoken. I'm going to read what I sent to you this week because I think it aptly sums up my view on this. This sudden push to address the charter has personal agenda written all over it. Rushing through the process makes me wonder what the urgency is. I'm pretty sure most of the population is not intimidated by traditional pronouns in the charter language. Also, we learned our lesson on resignations of officials. We understand we have no health officer, and while there are other issues that do not necessarily line up with today's current situation with our charter, none of them are so critical that it would behoove rushing a process. So what is the real intent of this? Do we need to make sure our community appears woke, or is there an actual reason why we are in a rush to, once again, push something through? I feel at this point, there are 3 of us who may very well not be here come November. I think this might be something that would be good to be worked through a little bit more, and then perhaps let the next council take this up and see where they stand with it. So for those reasons, I'm not supporting this initiative tonight.
Anybody else?
I just want to say that this isn't a rush process. You just listened, and the city manager said we had a workshop back in February. So this seems to be June right now, so I don't think it's being rushed.
It was brought up, the topic was brought up, but it has not been discussed. Had it been discussed, some of the things Councilwoman Moffitt just mentioned would have been addressed, right? There wouldn't be questions about them now. And this is not a critique to Mr. Smith or Mr. Nushai or to Mayor Scripture for wanting to get this going and for putting their thoughts out there. The thought, and Miss August, if you were a part of this as well, not to leave you out. The idea is it's supposed to be a collaborative thing. It is. There are many ways to attack this, and I just feel like there's a lot going on in our community. We don't have a lot of people who are jumping up and down to want to participate in many things, and I just feel like this is important. Let's address it fully instead of just going out, buying the stamp, coming in for a vote, and then rubber stamping what's going on here, because that's what it feels like.
Kathy, do you have anything?
I personally feel like the part asking the community if they even want to address this should be on the next ballot. As for the second part of it, I partially agree that I don't really like to see both of them on the same thing. I think I would just personally like to see the city, the residents, asked if they even want us to consider it. And if it's an overwhelming no, then we have to go back and look at how we're doing this.
But if it's an overwhelming no, then it's irrelevant about the second part.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but if it's an overwhelming yes, we don't have to postpone. They don't have to postpone. starting the process. If you, otherwise you have to wait until, I don't know, Mr. Nushai, without having to run a special election, it would be what, the next August?
Yeah.
I think so.
So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I understand.
Well, I guess the wording then would, in my opinion, doesn't clearly state that. I think there would have to be a lot of education on the process, because if I read through this, it's like they're asking that, and okay, boom, now we're going to do this. That's going to confuse a lot of people as to, wait, didn't they just ask me if I even wanted it? And I said no, and now I'm supposed to vote on these people. I think there's got to be a little bit of clarification in there as to, like, maybe now that you voted for this, if this is approved, these are the people willing to step up to the plate and
I
vote.
personally would take that as a compromise. If we had just that one, if the motion was changed so that that was the only resolution on the ballot, I'd support that as a compromise, Kathy.
Well, I'm not, at this point, I'm not even necessarily a complete compromise, but making sure there's a statement in there that says, if this first question is approved, then the next thing will happen. If this is not approved, this is a moot point.
Mr. Smith?
Compromise for me.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
And I thought you did that. I thought that was,
It's in number 1 on the second item 6 with the second resolution. It does state, provided the electors of the city declare in favor of the general revision. So I mean,
but I'm sorry, let me rephrase that.
that's what you're
I
asking.
apologize. Well, yes, I mean, you did say that in the resolution where you spelled it out, but I think more to what Kathy's saying is that, the community would need to understand that going into it. They're not going to just sit there and read that dorky resolution, which, by the way, is why I thought you did a nice FAQ. I do think that was a good job.
Yeah, but not everybody's going to read those.
Right, no. But Mr. Smith, what was, when we discussed how, and this was a general conversation, but when we discussed about a project budget, when there was things in there that the community I think we were comparing it to the schools, the way they've done the bond, right? Where they've done both the meetings and the people, and then they also put out information so people were aware. And you talked about using the email system, all of our normal venues, plus our highlights comes out, and there is some information and highlights on the possibility of it, because we hadn't wrote this yet and I had to get in that, but I put in there that we did pass the resolution that we would have a charter commission, and that we were looking at then the language for the ballot. So that's going to every household in Clawson that explains that and talks about that a little bit. And that was some of the marketing that you would do, and not every project we do, but in, until when we get to the capital stuff, that's kind of,
We would do a full-
marketing that.
That's our Nick and I's goal as part of this communication plan, is to utilize every possible method for council for that as well as this commissions, to keep on telling people, hey, we're in offices, this is how to do it. Frequently ask questions about things, all these things that we were trying to provide. We want to make sure we get out in every possible method.
One of the questions I asked Mr. Nushai, so I understood, because Kathy, that's part of the reason I asked if it would be easier to put this on here, so they had the time to get the language. But one of the questions I asked is, Mr. Nushai, and correct me if I misunderstood you, but a person would have to, as it's spelled out in the thing, they would go, just like if they were running for council or whatever, they would go grab a petition, they'd get their 25 signatures and submit them. And what I'd asked is similar to what happened with the school board, when everybody realized that there was a seat available and they didn't actually have to do all the signature collecting. All of a sudden it was a hot race for write-ins. And Ms. Rennis, you did say write-ins is perfectly okay, right? They just simply have to, Mike, what's the process for a write-in? If someone becomes aware and this is the July 20th deadline with a petition, what do they have to do to be a write-in?
It would go to August and pick out the write-in affidavit and to declare themselves as a write-in candidate.
And they're on the ballot as a write-in candidate, right?
They have to have that affidavit done. We're not allowed to count votes of people that have not registered.
Correct. Yes.
So
Yes.
we don't
but they
count
would just
Mickey Mouse or
register.
Bugs Bunny anymore. Yeah.
Dang it. But yes,
Right.
they would register that form with you and then they would be counted on the ballot if someone wrote their name in, correct? So
They would not
we
appear on
did
the
have,
as they're doing the counting, the tabulator looks at all that and when they adjudicate it.
meaning it would count as long as they filled in that information. I mean, I couldn't not fill in that form and then just throw my name on the thing and have it counted, right? But that was, we had quite a few people step up in the school board when they realized the slot was open after the fact. And I've had several people reach out to me and say, I'd be interested in serving on that charter commission
Okay.
once they saw it from our meeting and saw the presentation. So I'd like to give the community a chance. I would like to give, that's why I didn't understand the comment about we wouldn't be letting community involvement. I would like to give our community a chance and residents a chance to decide for themselves what they want to stand up for and do. And this does that.
So I recall in one of those brief conversations that we had regarding the charter in the past, that I had requested that perhaps we get a list of the most critical items that would need to be addressed in our charter. And we never came back to it. So a lot of the changes, although they could be made, I would say are frivolous just because they're not impactful on the operations of council or on, they're not going to affect us one way or the other, whether they're there or not, right? But there are some things that probably are important that should be addressed. So I feel it would have been nice to start at a place like that and say these things actually impact our business on a day-to-day basis or potentially could. These are the things we need to look at, as opposed to just saying our charter was written in 1940, whatever, we need to rewrite it. I just feel like that's not a fair look at why we do it. You don't have to, we don't go back and rewrite Shakespeare because we now, don't put our prose together the way they did back then. That's just not, you don't do stuff just for the sake of doing it.
But we did
I have a
already.
question as well
ahead.
regarding people who may want to serve. I read it, let me think. No nepotism, right? So no relatives of anyone that's currently employed or on a council or a board or a commission. Board or commissions, that's okay, right? So then if someone's currently serving in a capacity and they want to apply for this, will they be subject to the same terms as anyone else who's serving in office? Will they then be required to relinquish their position until after the election?
They're not elected officials.
That's what the charter says.
If they were on a planning commission, when I was on planning, I had to quit in order to run for council. So if it's that type of a situation, would they be required to leave their current position, whatever it may be, on a board or a commission?
Rhinus, remember we asked this question a while ago and you said that may be what our charter said, but that's not legal. That you cannot force someone. In fact, the people running for council right now or that are looking at running for council, if they're serving on a board or commission as an appointed, they do not have to resign to run.
That's my opinion.
Okay, so
That's my opinion as an attorney. However, that if this provision of our charter were to be challenged, it would come back insufficient. It wouldn't hold up muster. That being said, that's the provision of the charter for so long as it's on the books and it hasn't been challenged in any way, shape, or form. I think I would recommend that we hold up to it. We would have to.
and past practice counts for something, does it not?
But that's, again, I think if anybody challenges, I can pretty much put it in writing, but that's probably not going to hold up.
So do we intend to enforce that?
I'm sorry?
Do we intend to enforce that provision with the upcoming election?
Thank the gods, I'm not the one that enforces it. I'd give you just the opinion, but the sergeant at arms would, and our clerk obviously would be the gatekeeper as far as that's concerned.
So August, is the intent to enforce that at the upcoming election?
Nope. I let judges make those decisions. I don't make decisions like that. That's not on me to keep anybody off the ballot or decide who does and doesn't get elected. I will not enforce that way. I will seek a legal opinion.
Having someone take take themselves off of a place that they're currently serving in order to run for an office does not preclude them from not being elected to office.
You didn't, I was asked if I would enforce it. I said, I'm not the enforcement. The legal system's going to enforce that. I'm not going to tell someone, no, you can't do this when it comes to running for office. The
So if
charter
someone
says
comes
that,
to-
but I'm going to say that the charter says you can't do this. We'll get a legal opinion if you want to run, but I'm not the hammer on people going on the ballot when they file the legal paperwork.
No,
So
but
who-
you're supposed to hold up the charter, right? If you signed to hold up the charter, we all did, right? So
Yeah.
if the charter says something, your responsibility, as all of ours is to
I'll
the best of
cross
your
this bridge when I
knowledge,
come to
adhere
it.
to the responsibility.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that's a wise
And that's-
idea because I have a feeling that there are people underneath that bridge right now trying to figure out how they're going to get to the other side. So let's address it.
Why don't we let those
But-
people
but-
figure it out? It
but
is
yeah.
there.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think that's, August is exactly right. It's a situation that when it presents itself, we're going to deal with. And I think August's position actually is not unwise, on the contrary. I do state that he is the gatekeeper, and because the clerk is a gatekeeper, but his statement makes sense to me. And when the situation presents itself, we're going to deal with, I will issue a legal opinion. I'll do the analysis and everything else. My opinions, of course, are my thoughts for counsel. They're also not, I'm neither judge nor jury. I'm an attorney. That said, I think that opinion is going to hold sway with respect to the actions that we're going to take as a city and what we permit and what we do not permit. So I think, we're getting caught up perhaps, and I think it's a valid analysis, a valid debate to have, but we're getting caught up in a situation that has not presented itself, that I'm aware of any of this.
So it had not presented itself on what the appropriate measures were for someone to walk off their job, walk off their responsibility on council either. And we paid the price for that in just a lapse of time, if nothing else, right? So this is something that clearly needs to be addressed. I understand that's not what this meeting is about, but it is something that clearly needs to be addressed. And to make it seem like it can go either way is not comfortable for me, knowing that I had to adhere to a set of standards and that other people had to adhere to those standards as well. And that makes me think that depending on who it is, the standards may in fact be different moving forward. And I don't like the idea of that at all.
Actually, I don't think you had to, Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh,
You
actually,
chose to,
I
and you
did.
chose not no. You chose to.
No, you
challenge
weren't
it.
there, Ms. Scripture. I did. I was told that I had to. Of course I was told that I had to. You weren't
By
there.
But who
We're
you
still on
doesn't
item number
matter.
five. So on item
It
number
wasn't my
5.
dad. I mean, you know what I
All
mean?
right.
Like I took the
Madam
appropriate-
Mayor,
Thank
we have a
you.
point of order.
Yep, point of order.
Can we get back on
All right,
We
subject?
have the first motion on the table is the motion for the language that was presented, whatever Lou just makes. I just lost my page. Oh man, now I go back up to that page. There it
This
is.
is,
Thank you. Back on to for a Clawson City Charter General Revision ballot proposition to be submitted to the electors of the city at November 2nd, 2021 general election be approved. Seriously, I get the language is confusing, but we're really just saying that it goes to the it goes to the ballot for the residents to decide if they want a charter commission to redo the charter. That's what that is asking. So can you roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Moffett,
So pursuant to section 4.07 of the charter, it states that I can choose not to vote on something if I state my reason for not voting. And my reason for not voting is this is an ill-conceived item that should not be supported. And that is why I'm not voting on it.
will be recorded. Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milan.
I will also abstain from voting based on the fact that I feel that this is a rushed process and that it's not been handled appropriately.
The vote will be recorded. That is 3 ayes. It passes.
All right. Next on the agenda then is, well, we've already discussed it, so I'll go ahead and make the motion that we make a move to for a resolution for a call for the election of a charter commission ballot proposition to be submitted to the electors Now, Mike, you got me confused here. Isn't that, wait, is there one after that? No. This is the one to be submitted.
Yeah, this is a call for the election of a charter commission.
Right, so that would be the people that sign up to, or say they want to run for.
Names that would be on the ballot to be selected
Thank you.
from.
Okay, so I move the resolution for a call for the election of a charter commission ballot proposition to be submitted to the electors of the city of Clawson at the November 2nd, 2021 general election be approved. If anybody would like to second that.
I'll support it.
Thank you, Kathy. And I think we have discussed that. I know. So I'm going to go ahead and roll call the vote. Unless, does anybody have a final question about anything on there? No? All right. Roll call the vote, please.
Councilmember Phillips,
Yes.
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milan.
I again will abstain due to my previous statement.
No vote will be recorded. Councilmember Moffett,
I again will not be voting, as I thought it would have been very wise to remove this from consideration and just go with the other motion.
no vote will be recorded, ma'am. It's 1, 2, 3 votes, and it passes.
Thank you, August. All right. Well, on the outside chance that anybody has any other comments, that's on the agenda. And if not, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead, Councilmember Moffett.
So you made the comment was made earlier why people don't want to run. And the people that I talk to don't want to run because of the toxic diatribe that the example of which was what started with the meeting, where one person feels the right to express and criticize and condemn everybody else and then doesn't open the floor for additional comments. It's the toxicity of those types of things. It's the toxicity of a bunch of people behind the scenes deciding things and not being transparent and talking about them in public. And there were several omissions to that tonight, where, you know, we heard Ms. Scripture say, well, I told Rennis and Mike to do that. And those are the things that the people that I talk to that keeps them from wanting to run. They don't want any part of that. And frankly, I can't blame them. The other thing I want to address is there was some, consternation about alleged accusations about why the budget was being approved right now. And we all certainly enjoyed being schooled about what we don't know. But I keep going back to last year, where all those laws were still in place, and yet there was no opposition to formatting and messaging and those sorts, and all the legal things that were outlined. And you got to ask why. And from my spot, and this is just my opinion from what I see from seeing how the sausage is made and how people interact. We've been through 3 city managers, and we have the 4 city manager, and those who are watching know that, there's certain people that are gunning for number 4. And as I think you will see things unfold in the next couple of weeks, that whole showmanship was to sort of build a case for some accusations that are going to be leveled. So stay tuned for those, but don't let it be swept under the rug with a bunch of, legalese and schooling us on what we should and should be doing, because that hasn't happened last year. So there's a reason that it's happening this year. Those of you who are paying attention, you know what's going on. But I just, we're all schooled in what's being on transparency and what transparency is. And I think we all know what it is. It's being forthright about what we're really intending and what's going on. And that's a key to transparency. So I just really wanted to address the diatribe that we were all subject to at the beginning of the meeting without anyone being able to rebut or say anything. And that's part of the toxicity that's keeping people from running, from what I've been told.
Anybody else? Yes.
So in the beginning, you mentioned that we were confused regarding the meaning of transparency. Without giving you the definition of transparency, I can tell you that I personally am not at all confused about the meaning of transparency. You mentioned that we have a job as city council. We don't have jobs as city council. We are not paid city employees. It is not our 100% function to ensure that the finance director is doing what we want her to do, nor the city manager or the DPW director or the police chief or the girl who takes the calls very well, Lisa, thank you, at Public Works. Our job is to have some oversight, and it's not a job, it's a responsibility. I would like to say that we have all been part of this process for the past year and a half as this council. As Councilwoman Moffitt just stated, the last budget went through no questions asked. At this point, anybody who had concerns about how the budget should be formulated structurally or what they wanted included should have been addressed perhaps along the way instead of after the fact, because all that did was just hold up the process and create drama. So since my email was so well stated in the beginning, and I didn't have a time for retribution, it's not retribution, sorry, a response, I would like to read my email in its entirety so that people can understand what you were referencing and why. So it began with a good morning. I'm curious why these topics are critical for immediate approval and why we are not working towards total transparency by addressing these issues during a regular meeting. We have held up the budget approval for a considerable amount of time, during which numerous accusations, both personal and professional, have been lobbed at staff. Members of this council chose to see their personal knowledge and judgment as paramount to that of the professionals we employ. Now, magically, we are ready to approve the budget and want to do so in a special meeting, which we all know will not be well attended. I believe we owe it to our staff and our residents to address this openly at a regularly scheduled meeting where the concerns that have been stated can once and for all be laid to rest, and perhaps a public acknowledgement to our staff can be made at the confidence we have in their abilities. If transparency is essential to the political process, it is critically important now for this cause. For this reason, the agenda items outlined for the special meeting should absolutely be addressed during a regularly scheduled meeting. I then went on to talk about the charter, which I read you. Our actions should be taken in the best interest of the citizens. Public, open, regular meetings. Additionally, if we are back to meeting in person, all meetings should be held in person. No making it easier for people to be at their vacation homes or on vacation or wanting to wear pajamas, whatever. It is a commitment to serve on this council. Time, schedule, availability, and showing up are all part of the deal. It is not necessarily supposed to be convenient. I appreciate your allowing me the opportunity to say that. And I would like to say once and for all, Mike, thank you so much for enduring the comments, the criticism, and the roundabout for this process. Sorry, Kelly, welcome to the team. I hope it gets better for you from here on out. And August for enduring this as well as part of the process. Thank you. And to everyone else who had an impact on this. We're not experts. I don't want to be an expert at what you do. I want you guys to have the empowerment to do what you do well. And I think that should be our number one job as council, is to give people the tools. That's what a good leader does. They give people the tools to do their job. They step back, they allow them to do it. If they need to be critiqued or criticized or encouraged, it shouldn't be criticism. Encouraged, we should do that, but we should do it kindly and compassionately. This is what people do for a living. We should allow them to enjoy what they do for a living and not poke at them constantly. Thank you very much.
Anybody else?
I just want to correct her. This is a transparency. It doesn't have to be a regular meeting. This was posted. All the laws were followed. 1 million people could have signed on to this thing and broke the system. I mean, anybody can come here. If the mayor pro tem has valid complaints, then she should take them to the attorney and prove the things that are happening behind the scenes that she thinks. She's just given a false idea to citizens that there might be something going on. And I know there's nothing going on. So I don't even know where she comes from. And a comment about you being at your cottage. We've made several changes for her because she can't make a 6 o'clock meeting or 7 o'clock meeting. We always got to make it convenient for her. And now she's complaining that you wanted to make it convenient for yourself. And it falls under the law, so make it convenient all the time. I don't care.
Mr. Sampson, I won't even address your concerns because they were ridiculous and whatever, just
You're st-
ridiculous.
you're
Just
still-
so you know, ridiculous.
You're still addressing them, so that's good.
No, no.
Councilmember Phillips, did you have anything? You're on mute, Kathy.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn because all this bickering is gonna go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like it always does.
I
Nothing
second.
accomplished.
I'll second that.
So I move we adjourn.
I second.
All
Could you
roll.
roll call vote, please, Mr. I'm sorry, August?
Councilmember Sampson,
Yes.
Mayor Scripture,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Milan,
Gladly.
Councilmember Moffett,
Yes.
and Councilmember Phillips.
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
12.
And thank you, Ken. Good job.
No
Yeah.
worries. Thanks, everyone.
All
Happy
right.
Fourth, everybody.
November 4th, see you Tuesday.